That evening I was sitting alone in our small house in Chicago, absent-mindedly scrolling through social media. The wind outside howled through the narrow streets, rattling the windows, and the streetlights cast long, eerie shadows through the blinds. The city had a way of feeling alive at night, the distant hum of traffic, the occasional honk from a frustrated driver, the muffled laughter of pedestrians outside, but inside the house felt still too still. Ed, at a time on my phone, 12:17 a.m. Vanessa was late. She had spent the last 3 days in New York for a business conference, and I had told myself not to worry. When she hadn't texted much, she was busy after all important meetings, networking events, corporate dinners, the whole thing, but even knowing that I couldn't shake the unease that had been gnawing at me since she left finally. The quiet was interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Headlights flashed through the window as tires crunched against the pavement. I sat up, a little straighter. She was finally home a moment later. The front door opened and there she was, Vanessa, my wife, standing in the entryway with her suitcase in tow. But something was different. She looked stunning as always. But there was a glow about her, not the tired, jet-lagged wariness I expected. Her cheeks were flushed, her eyes bright with excitement, and a breathless smile tugged at the corners of her lips. It was the kind of expression I hadn't seen in a long time, not directed at me anyway. She stepped inside, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she shrugged off her coat. I expected her to say something, to sigh and complain about the long flight, the taxi driver who talked too much, or how exhausted she was from 3 days of constant meetings. Instead, she let out a soft, breathless giggle. Not at me, her phone. She was staring at it. She typed something quickly, fingers moving with an urgency that made my stomach twist. The glow of the screen illuminated her face. Her smile, lingering for just a moment longer before she locked it and finally looked up. "Hey, babe," she said casually, as if she hadn't just been somewhere else in her mind. God, that trip was amazing. The meetings went great. The dinners were incredible, seriously. I wish you could have been there. Her voice was animated almost overly. So I watched her carefully, trying to push aside the knees creeping through my chest. "Sounds like you had fun," I said, keeping my tone light. "Who was that?" I nodded toward her phone, which she now held tightly in her hand. There was a pause, just half a second. Barely long enough to notice, but long enough to set off alarm bells in my head. Then just as quickly she recovered. "Oh, just Sarah," she said, flipping the phone into her back pocket. "We were catching up about the trip." I forced a smile, but my mind was already racing. Sarah was one of her co-workers, sure. They were friendly, but Vanessa never texted her like this. Not at midnight. Not with that look on her face. She walked past me, pulling her suitcase behind her, and I caught a faint scent as she did it. Wasn't her usual floral perfume, no. This was something muskier, masculine cologne. I frowned. "You smell different," I said, before I could stop myself. Vanessa froze for just a second, another moment of hesitation before letting out a small, "Oh yeah, probably from the flight. You know how cramped those planes get." Some guy next to me was practically on top of me the whole time. Her explanation was reasonable, plausible, but I didn't believe her. "Right," I said, nodding slowly. She gave me a quick peck on the cheek, too quick, before grabbing her suitcase and heading toward the bedroom. "I'm going to unpack and shower," she called over her shoulder. I didn't move. I just stood there staring after her, my hands gripping the phone in my lap. Something was wrong. I could feel it. It was in the way she barely looked at me, the way she clutched her phone like it was a lifeline, the way her mood was just a little too light here. Excitement, a little too forced. Vanessa and I had been married for 5 years. I knew her. I knew her moods, her habits, the little quirks she had when she was nervous, and right now she was nervous for the first time since she left for New York. I felt it deep in my gut. Something wasn't right. I sat back down on the couch, rubbing a hand over my jaw, and listened to the sound of her moving around in the bedroom. The rustling of clothes, the faint hum of a zipper, the sudden thud of something hitting the floor. I leaned forward. Another pause, then the unmistakable sound of a deep sigh, frustrated, almost panicked. What the hell was going on? I hesitated, then got up, moving as quietly as possible toward the bedroom door. It was cracked open just enough for me to see inside. Vanessa was sitting on the edge of the bed, pale, clutching a small piece of paper in her trembling hand. Her phone screen lit up. and she quickly flipped it over, hiding the display from view. I frowned. "What's wrong?" I asked, stepping inside. She jumped as if she hadn't heard me coming. She turned toward me, her expression quickly morphing from shock to irritation. "Nothing," she said quickly, shoving the paper into her suitcase and zipping it shut. "Just tired." I glanced at the phone she had just hidden. "Who was that?" she exhaled sharply, standing up. "Jesus. Jason, it's no one. I told you, it's just Sarah." Her voice was sharper now, defensive. I held up my hands. "Okay?" "Just asking." Vanessa sighed, rubbing her temple. "Look, I've been traveling all day. I just need a shower and some sleep." "Okay?" She grabbed her toiletries and disappeared into the bathroom, shutting the door behind her a little too hard. Few seconds later, the sound of running water filled the house. I stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door. My heart pounding. My gut was screaming at me now. She was lying. I didn't know what about yet, but I was about to find out. The sound of running water filled the house, but my mind was drowning in something else. Doubt. I stood in the bedroom, staring at Vanessa's suitcase. My pulse was hammering against my ribs, my stomach twisting with unease. She was lying. I had no proof. Nothing concrete, at least. But I could feel it in my bones. The hesitation, the way she clutched her phone. The cologne that didn't belong to me. Something was off, and then there was that piece of paper. She had shoved it into her suitcase so fast, like she didn't want me to see it, like it was something I wasn't supposed to see. I glanced toward the bathroom door. The shower was still running. Steam beginning to seep out from underneath. She wouldn't be out for a while. My fingers twitched. I knew it was wrong, I knew. But the moment my hand touched the zipper of her suitcase, it felt less like a betrayal and more like self-preservation. I had to know. I slid the zipper open. My breath shallow. Her clothes were neatly packed inside, but as I sifted through them, my fingers brushed against something unfamiliar. A small box wrapped in a red ribbon. My heart nearly stopped. I pulled it out, my hands trembling. As I untied the bow, the lid came off and my stomach twisted into a knot so tight I thought I might be sick. Inside was a black lace lingerie set brand. New tag still attached, a gift. No, not for me. I would have remembered if Vanessa had bought something like this. For me, we had been together for 5 years. You didn't wear lingerie like this. For me, I swallowed hard. My throat suddenly drew. My mind raced through 1,000 explanations, each one more absurd than the last. Maybe she bought it for herself. Maybe she planned to surprise me. Maybe. I exhaled sharply. No, because if it were meant for me, she wouldn't have hidden it. She would have smiled, teased me about how I'd have to wait. She wouldn't have shoved it into her suitcase like a dirty secret. I forced myself to put the box back exactly as I had found it. My hands moved quickly, my breath uneven, but my mind wasn't done searching, and then I found the note tucked between the layers of her folded clothes, hidden like something meant to be forgotten. It wasn't long, just a few lines scribbled in Vanessa's handwriting. "These past few days have been amazing. I don't know what this means yet, but I don't want it to end. No name, no signature, but it didn't need one." I felt the room tilt around me, vision blurring at the edges. It was real. I wasn't paranoid, I wasn't crazy. Vanessa had been with someone else. I stared at the note for what felt like an eternity, my fingers tightening around the paper. My heartbeat pounded in mirrors, each thud a reminder that the life I thought I had was slipping through my fingers. The water in the bathroom shut off. Sage asterisk. I shoved the note back into the suitcase, zipping it up. Just as the bathroom door opened, Vanessa stepped out, wrapped in a towel, steam curling around her like a ghostly veil. Damp hair clung to her shoulders, and she looked at me with a strange expression. Suspicion. Had she noticed something? Had I been too obvious here? Yes, flicked toward the suitcase. "Just for a second, everything okay?" she asked, her voice careful. I forced a smile, my body tense. "Yeah, just waiting for you." She hesitated barely, then, as if deciding to let it go, she walked past me toward the dresser, opening a drawer to grab a pair of pajamas. I watched her every move. She wasn't the same woman who'd left 3 days ago. Something had changed, and I was going to find out exactly what. I barely slept that night. Vanessa had climbed into bed beside me. Nothing was wrong, turning off the lamp and snuggling beneath the covers. But I stayed awake, Staring at the ceiling, my mind racing, that note replayed. In my head over and over, I don't want it to end. What exactly had she not wanted to end the business trip? The person she had been with, the thrill of sneaking around. I turned my head slightly, watching her sleep. Her breathing was soft, steady, peaceful. How could she sleep so easily while my world was shattering? I clenched my jaw and 3:42 a.m. I needed answers. Vanessa's phone was on the nightstand, face down. Ik knew her passcode. She never changed it. She trusted me. Funny. I swallowed the lump in my throat. If I checked her phone and found nothing, I'd feel like Anne. But if I didn't check and let the suspicion eat me alive, I'd never forgive myself. Slowly, carefully, I reached for it. Her breathing didn't change. She didn't stir. I turned the phone over and tapped the screen. Locked. I hesitated, then typed in her passcode. It didn't work. My chest tightened. It tried again. Wrong. She had changed it. Vanessa never changed her passcode. I put the phone back exactly as it was, my hand shaking. She was hiding something, and I had just found proof. The next morning I acted normal. I had to Vanessa on. The other hand was different. She was edgy. Her usual morning routine was the same: coffee, scrolling through her phone, replying to work emails, but there was an underlying tension. I noticed it in the way she kept glancing at me when she thought I wasn't looking. The way she kept her phone closer than usual, like she was afraid I'd reach for it. I played along, pretending nothing was wrong. But the truth was, I wasn't just watching her. I was waiting. And when she left for work, I grabbed my own phone and pulled up our shared mobile account. Vanessa's call log popped up, and there it was, a number I didn't recognize, repeatedly every day. Sometimes multiple times. I felt a cold wave wash over me. I copied the number and ran it through a reverse search. It didn't take long for the name to appear. Ryan Grayson. The name meant nothing to me, but the pattern, the constant calls, it meant everything. The pieces were coming together, and I was about to tear this whole thing apart. The name Ryan Grayson stared back at me from my phone screen. It was just a name, a stranger. Someone I had never met, but the weight of it pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. I scrolled through Vanessa's call log again, my fingers tightening around the phone. She'd spoken to him every single day while she was in New York, multiple times. Some calls lasted only a few minutes, others stretched past an hour. My jaw clenched. Who the hell was he? I needed to be smart about this. If I accused her without proof, she'd turn it around on me, make me seem paranoid, insecure. No, I needed more, something undeniable. I copied the number and ran it through a few databases. Most were useless, but one finally gave me something concrete. Ryan Grayson, New York City. A sinking feeling settled in my stomach. So he wasn't just some local co-worker. He was there, right where Vanessa had been. I exhaled slowly, my mind racing. I needed to know more. I checked our bank account next, scrolling through recent charges. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe a fancy dinner, a hotel, something that screamed affair. But most of it looked normal. Airport meals, a coffee shop, a few Uber rides. And then I saw it, the Langford Hotel. A high-end place in Manhattan, not just a conference hotel. A place where couples went for privacy. The charge was for 2 nights. I sat back in my chair, staring at the screen. My pee thundered in my ears. Vanessa had told me she was staying at the Hyatt. Her company had booked it for the conference, so why the hell was she paying for a room at the Langford? There was only one explanation. She had stayed with him. The air in the room felt suffocating. I had been bracing for this, suspecting it, but seeing it in front of me was different. It was real. I'd spent 3 nights at home alone, missing her, wondering if she was okay, while she had been in some overpriced hotel room with another man. I clenched, my fists breathing through the anger. This wasn't the time to explode. Not yet. I needed more. I grabbed Vanessa's suitcase. My hands felt numb as he unzipped it. Again, my heart pounding. He dug deeper this time, moving past the clothes, the toiletries, the usual travel junk. And then I found it tucked into the side pocket, almost hidden, a room key card, the Langford Hotel. I turned it over in my hands, my stomach churning. The plastic felt heavy, like a confession. She'd kept it, not thrown it away, not forgotten it, and there was only one reason for that. It meant something to her. I forced myself to keep going. There had to be more. And then, buried at the bottom of the suitcase, I found a receipt. It was slightly crumpled, but the details were clear. A purchase made at a jewelry store in Manhattan. One man's bracelet, my breath hitched. It wasn't for me. Vanessa had never bought me jewelry, not once in 5 years. She knew I didn't wear it. So why the hell was she buying a bracelet while she was supposed to be at a business conference? I stared at their seat, my hands shaking. It felt like I was drowning in the truth, the evidence piling up around me, suffocating me. The phone calls, the lingerie, the hotel, the goddamn bracelet. I knew my wife had cheated on me. I barely spoke to Vanessa the next day. I didn't trust myself. She was acting normal, going through her routine like nothing had happened. She made coffee, hummed a little as she got dressed, but I could see it. Now the cracks, the way she kept checking her phone, the way she seemed distracted. Somewhere else she thought she had gotten away with it. She had no idea what was coming. I needed proof. Cold, undeniable evidence. If I confronted her now, she'd lie, she'd cry, get defensive, spin it around on me. But if I had more, if I had everything, she wouldn't be able to weasel her way out of it. So I made a decision. I called a private investigator. His name was Dana, no-nonsense guy, mid-40s, the kind of man who had seen it all. When I told him what I needed, he didn't even hesitate. Send me everything you've got, he said. Phone records, hotel charges, anything suspicious. I'll take care of the rest. I mailed him the details, the number, the hotel receipt, the unexplained jewelry purchase, every red flag. And then I waited. 3 days later, Dan sent me a file. It was worse than I imagined. The photo shit me first. Vanessa with him. Ryan Grayson was real. And he was exactly what I expected. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of guy who oozed confidence, the kind of guy women noticed. The pictures showed them together at a rooftop bar, her hand on his arm in a dimly lit restaurant, leaning in close, laughing, and then the final ones, them entering the Langford Hotel together. My chest felt tight. There was no way to misinterpret this, no excuse. No innocent explanation. Dan had even found more, a future reservation. Vanessa and Ryan had booked a weekend in Las Vegas. 2 weeks from now, she had no intention of stopping. I closed the file, me hands gripping the edges of the desk. It wasn't just a mistake. Not a drunken lapse in judgment. It was planned thought, out ongoing. She had come home to kiss me. Slept in our bed while already planning her next trip with him. My vision blurred with rage. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to end this that evening. I sat in the living room waiting. Vanessa walked in, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging me. It was almost funny. She thought she was in control. I placed the folder on the coffee table. Sit down. He said. She blinked. What's it now? There must have been something in my voice, because for the first time I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She slowly sat down. He slid the file toward her, open it. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Flipping through the photos, I watched her face go pale. She shoved the file away. Where did you get this? Does it matter? My voice was cold. Go ahead. Lie to me. Now she didn't, because she couldn't, and for the first time in weeks, I was the one in control. Vanessa shoved the folder away, like it had burned her. Her hands trembled as she looked at me, her face a mix of panic and something else. Anger, not guilt. Anger. Where did you get this? She asked, her voice sharp. I didn't answer. I just sat there, my expression blank, waiting for her to dig her own grave. She swallowed hard, flipping through the photos again, the one of her and Ryan at the rooftop bar, the one where they were holding hands at dinner, and then the final one, the one that sealed everything, her walking into the Langford Hotel with him. Her lips parted slightly, like she was trying to find the right words. There were none. How long? I asked, my voice quiet. She looked up at me, her eyes wide. Jason, how long? Vanessa, she flinched at my tone. I wasn't yelling, but I could tell she knew this wasn't a conversation she could manipulate. She'd lost control. Her shoulders sagged. Slightly, she knew lying was pointless. Now a few months, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. Months. Not a mistake, not a drunken one-night stand, a choice over and over again. You were going to Keepling, weren't you? I asked, leaning forward. Even now, even with the proof in front of you, you weren't going to tell. She looked down, saying nothing. I nodded, running a hand through my hair. You know what's funny? I had a gut feeling the second you walked in that night. You were glowing, laughing at your damn phone. Vanessa finally looked up here, expression twisting. So what, Jason? You went through my things, you Hired a PU, invaded my privacy. I laughed a sharp, bitter sound. That's what you're going with. I invaded your privacy. You've been screwing another man. Vanessa, while I was sitting at home like a dumbass worried about you. Her jaw clenched. It wasn't like that. I scoffed. Oh, really? Then tell me what it was like. Tell me how you ended up in a hotel with some guy every night while I was here texting you. Good night. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out because there was nothing to say. I shook my head, my chest tight with rage. What was the plan, huh? Were you going to keep sneaking around, keep coming home to me like nothing was happening? Or were you just waiting for him to ask you to leave me? Vanessa's face twisted with something, like shame, and for the first time I saw it, she had thought about it, leaving me, being with him. I swallowed the lump in my throat. You were, I whispered. Jesus Christ, Vanessa. You were actually considering it. Their silence was deafening. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room, my hands on my hips. I had never felt so sick in my life. The woman I had built my life with had been planning an exit strategy. She didn't even try to deny it. Jason, she said, suddenly standing up, her voice desperate. I never meant for it. Took us this far. I swear I never wanted to hurt you. I turned to her, my face blank. You didn't want to hurt me. Then why did you keep doing it? She bit her lip. I know. Just shook my head. I don't want to hear excuses. I want the truth. Do you love him? The question hit her like a slap. She physically took a step back, her mouth opened, then closed, and that was my answer. I felt like the floor had been ripped out from under me. Wow, I breathed, letting out a humorless laugh. You couldn't even lie to me, could you? Vanessa looked away, her eyes glassy. Jason, I don't know. I don't know how I feel. I stared at her, my heart pounding. You don't know I love you, she said quickly, stepping toward me. I do, but with him it was different. He made me feel. I held up a hand. Do not finish that sentence. She shut her mouth, tears spilling down her cheeks for amendment. Neither of us spoke, and then, finally, I exhaled and sat back down, staring at the table. This is done, I said. Vanessa stiffened. What? I looked up. My expression blank. Us were done. Her face crumpled. Jason, please. I shook my head. Don't beg me now, Vanessa. You had your chance to fix this months ago. You had your chance every single time you picked up the phone and called him instead of me. Every single time you got on a plane and met him in a hotel, you made your choice. Tears streamed down her face, but I didn't care. For once, I didn't care. You need to leave, I said flatly. Tonight here. Yes, widened. Jason, where am I supposed to go? Not my problem. I said, go to your boyfriend. I'm sure he'll welcome you with open arms. She flinched. He doesn't even know. I laughed again, shaking my head. Wow, so let me get this straight. You were willing to destroy our marriage for him, but you never even told him the truth? She looked down, defeated. I stood up. I'm done talking. Pack a bag and go, Jason, she whispered, reaching for me. Stepped back. Don't touch me, she sobbed, wiping at her face, but I didn't care. I watched her disappear into the bedroom, the sound of her frantically packing filling the house. By the time she walked past me toward the door, suitcase in hand, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just emptiness. She turned to me one last time, her lip trembling. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I just closed the door. The next day, I filed for divorce. I handed over all the evidence to my lawyer, the photos, the phone records, the hotel bookings. He assured me Vanessa wouldn't get a damn thing in the settlement. Meanwhile, I did something else. I found Ryan's wife. Because of course he was married. It didn't take much digging. Dan, my pie, had already gathered that information. Her name was Emily Grayson, and from what I could tell, she had no clue her husband had been screwing my wife, so I did the only logical thing. I sent her everything. The photos, the calls, the hotel reservation for Las Vegas, and then I sat back and watched the bomb explode. 2 days later, Ryan's entire life crumbled. His wife kicked him out. His company got wind of the affair, and word spread through their social circles fast. Vanessa, meanwhile, lost everything. Her career took a nosedive. Turns out cheating on your husband while pretending to be a corporate professional doesn't look great to employers. She tried reaching out, called me, emailed, even showed up at my door. Once I never answered. She wasn't my problem anymore. Months later, I finally felt free. One night I walked into a small cafe and met someone new. Her name was Sophie. She was warm, genuine, and when she laughed it was real. Not something hidden behind a screen. For the first time, In a long time I felt light Vanessa was just a bad chapter in my life, and I was finally moving forward without her.